For me, when I get a watch in the hand, whether I'm going to review it or I have an interest in purchasing the watch myself, the first thing I do is start looking for things. I'm looking for how the watch feels, its case finishing, the dial layout, its legibility, the lume, how comfortable the watch is, how does the crown feel, the winding experience. Everything that gives me feedback, I look for. And in all this, I also make a mental note of all the faults I find in a watch. And believe me, every watch has faults, none are exempt. In fact, I have yet to come across the perfect watch that ticks all the boxes. That watch does not exist. So in knowing all this, I then ask myself a question. Can I live with the faults of a watch if I were to purchase it for myself? So why am I saying all this? Well, very simple. This watch I have in my hand is a very interesting watch, and in many ways. It's got faults. Oh yeah, like every other watch that I've ever handled. I'll share those faults. But after 3 weeks on my wrist, for some reason, I've not wanted to take this thing off. You see, I've invested 3 weeks of wrist time with this micro brand at the expense of my personal watch collection suffering in the dark, cold, dreary watch box all alone. So I asked the question, was it worth the sacrifice? Welcome back to the channel, guys. As you can see here, we've got a watch. It's called the Reverie. It's been sent out to the channel for review. We don't have to send it back. It's not going to influence my review as always, but I tell you what, guys, this is a very interesting watch in many ways, in more ways than one. But before we get onto that, I received an email from one of my viewers regarding a watch review I did recently. And he said to me, he actually purchased the watch that I reviewed based on my review. But he also mentioned that the video footage that I did and the photography did not do that watch justice. And you know what, I gotta agree with him. There's certain watches that you can photograph, you can videotape, and unless you have them in the hand, you really can't express what the watch is giving you. This is a similar sort of watch. There's a really nice vibe and look coming off that gear-shaped pattern dial and that unique contrasting handset. The subtle touch of mustard on the seconds hand and the dial font gives the watch a sublime feeling of being a little bit different, or maybe even a little bit special. You see, this watch is predominantly monotone in color. And as we all know, when a watch features such specifications in tonality, there's always a high risk of legibility issues. And this watch is not exempt here. I've had to look twice many times to read the time. However, the second stare has always been a little bit longer and accompanied with a little bit more of a grin. You know, that feeling of knowing that there will be great satisfaction when you discover those unique hands at just the right angle as they catch the light and show their glory. So maybe this is more a romantic experience rather than a technical timekeeping device. And I think that's been captured here in a way that you want to complain, but the watch's aesthetics causes you to reach deep into your heart and overlook its shortfalls. Okay, enough with the romance and enough with the experiential side of things. How good or how bad is this watch? Well, let's start with its specifications. We have a case diameter of 40 millimeters. I measure the bezel at 38.5. The case height is exactly 12 mil. The lug to lug distance I measure at 42.5, a smidgen under 43 mil. And a lug width of 20 mil. So this is what I call good, very good specs. And the reason I say that is because for wrists anything under 7 inch, this thing's gonna wear like a dream, and it does. The wearing experience is, as I said, sublime. And on my 7-inch wrist, it seems to have found a very good home. The watch has played well with the light, and the balance of the watch head and the bracelet has been ideal. In fact, the on-the-fly adjustment of the clasp has left me not reaching for any of my other watches in my watch box all this time. So, what are the negatives, I hear you ask? Is it the Miyota 9039 movement with a no-date complication? Well, no. It's been running like clockwork, excuse the pun. Literally, it's been running fantastic. So the movement has been great. Is it the sapphire crystals on the top and the bottom? The anti-reflective coatings? Well, no. They're ideal. In fact, the legibility of the crystal is great. I can see the dial, I can see the detail in the Guerchère patterns beautifully, no problems. What about the engraving on the case back in Latin, which says Soli Deo Gloria, which basically means glory to God alone? Well, to be honest, I actually like that. I like it when a watch has something different, some special meaning from the watch author, his personal touch. I see someone being bold enough here to wear his heart on his sleeve and become at the same time a little bit vulnerable in a very difficult society and very testing times. That's pretty cool. So what is it that could have been improved about this watch? Well, firstly, the lume. Its intensity that a proper dive watch needs is pretty much lacking, especially on that inverted triangle on the bezel. The watch features BGW9 Superluminova on the hands and C3 on the applied indices and pip. It's good, but it could have been better, especially on that pip. So speaking of that bezel, how is that bezel? Let's check it out. It's nice, it's crisp. Little bit of back play, but it seems to fall into position just nicely. So the action is quite nice, it's crisp, it's what you'd expect from a watch of this caliber. So if the bezel is good, what other faults does this watch have? And you might be saying, Pete, why you keep talking about faults? Well, I'm trying to find faults of this watch that can bug me, because I've had this watch on the wrist for 3 weeks and I can't understand why. It's been a lovely experience, guys. It really has. And you know, every watch does have faults, like we said. Legibility, of course. You've got a warm grey dial, you've got the hands appearing and disappearing, but it's a pleasure to find them, because when you do, the Guerchère pattern on the dial seems to surprise you. The way it plays with the light, a sunburst effect, the radial brushing on the outside of that dial, it just really works. It really works for a romantic experience, something that's giving me character, and that's what I like about this watch. But if I have to be nitpicky, I'd probably pick on the crown. That crown is lovely. It's got a beautiful knurling. It's signed, as you can see. It's slightly recessed into the case, which is great, but it's a little bit small. It's a little bit small for my hands. But unscrewing that crown, as you can see, we've got a Miyota 9039, no date, so it's a perfect no date movement. It hacks, as you can see. We can adjust the time, and away you go. Lock that in. There's a hand winding experience, which is quite nice, and the screw down experience, again, sublime. So the watch has a lot going forward, regardless of the negatives. And this is what I do when I look at watches. I look at a watch like this and I think, gee, it's really made me feel good all week, and last week, and the week before. So that's impressive. That's impressive for a watch of this price point. See, the watch comes in at $499, when even for us, we've been given a discount code so that we get 15% off for my viewers, which is pretty cool. So the watch, I think at that price point, with its Miyota, with the way it makes you feel, with that bracelet. See, that bracelet is lovely. That bracelet is, some would say it's a very similar bracelet to a Rolex Oyster style with its clasp. And you know what? You wouldn't be far from the truth. But it works. It seems to work, even with its clasp, its smoothness, its polish, high polish, the micro adjustment. It just seems to work. It really does, guys. It just seems to work. So I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here, and I know that manufacturers borrow ideas from other companies and other manufacturers. It's normal. There is nothing unique under the sun today. Very rare. Very rare. So whether a company borrows a handset from somewhere else, or a bracelet from somewhere else, or a case shape, it happens. I get that. But a watch like this is pretty much, I border it more on the unique. Apart from the bracelet, the actual watch head itself is lovely, and what it features with its dimensions, with the way it fits on the wrist. Like I said, this is going to find comfort on many wrists from 7-inch downwards. I think anything over 7.5 inch, you're really going to say, oh, it could be a little bit small, only because of those short lug to lug distance. But would I consider this a serious diver with its inadequate lume application? Well, no, of course not. But then again, I don't think any one of us takes their dive watches diving. You know, not these days. There are more technologically advanced devices today for that purpose. So personally, I liken this watch to something that I would normally look for when purchasing a watch. It's not a perfect watch, it's far from it, I get it, I really do. But it has something that many watches don't bring to the table. They just don't, guys. A romantic feeling, an intriguing look, a glance. It's definitely a little bit special, and in fact, it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to acquire. I think that feeling alone is worth it. When you handle watches, they give off a pleasurable visual experience. From the subtle white tip on that mustard seconds hand to the razor sharp high polished chamfer on the entire length of that case. It causes us to sometimes overlook its inadequacies, albeit the watch will probably draw me back to revisit it many and many times again in the future. It's sharp, it's shiny, it's bold, it's also subtle at the same time. A really impressive experience. So I'm going to sum up for you guys for review purposes. What are the pluses and what are the minuses? Well, for me, the pluses are very simple. The size and the wearability. It's ideal. At 40mm, 12mm thick, this thing is ideal. The design is lovely. The geoshare pattern is exceptional. It really is. I know it's stamped, but it really does play well with the light. The bracelet, the adjustability on the fly, the comfort, again, fantastic. The movement, the fact that it offers a no-date 9039, super accurate, very reliable. The clean and simple design of the monotone nature of this watch, with its subtle mustard yellow accents, it's lovely. The fact that the watch offers a free travel roll, an extra rubber strap, it's solid, it's very well built. You know, I can go on and on and on. There are positives of this watch that really have kept this on the wrist for 3 weeks. But in saying that, the watch has also negatives. And the negatives, it needs more lume. For me, that pip on the bezel needs a little bit more lume. Those markers could have done with a bit more. Negative number 2, legibility. Obviously being monotone, you're going to lose those hands occasionally, but going to the other side of this spectrum, I've enjoyed the lack of legibility, and it's really only minimal, guys. 90% of the time it's great. That 10% of the time when you do lose that dial, I'll look and I'll find those hands. I think, gee, that looks great. They just pick up the line of, that looks great. Another negative, the crown. For me, the fact that they've designed the crown with good knurling and it is recessed into the actual case is great, but it could have been bigger. It just could have been that little bit bigger, possibly an extra millimeter, just for the experience of hand winding. And the last negative, I could possibly say that bracelet. The fact that it really is very similar to a Rolex Oyster style, especially with that clasp on the fly adjustment, but it's good. In saying that, it's good. It really is, guys. It works. It seems to work. So I think overall as a package, the watch is great. It's ticking way above its price point for what you're getting, for how it makes you feel. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Feel free to leave me your comments. Let me know what you think of this watch. For me, it's been a great experience on the wrist for 3 weeks. I've enjoyed it. It's solid. It's built well. Not without its flaws, but they're livable. Thank you for watching, guys.